Chapter 19. Reconnecting while respecting. I'm sorry, but it is really not like we are reconnecting. We are just talking now, recommunicating. Because we were still sharing the world over these past many years. In the same city, even, she told him, careful of her tone. Well, not the entire time, he responded. I traveled around when I first got the truck. She gave no sign of having known or not known that fact. But you mean to tell me that this entire time since we last saw each other, you've not left Austin? Well, I left the city limits, but I haven't really traveled around the way you did. She faltered in her eye contact, afraid that she may have given away how much she knew about what he had done. Who does travel around like that? Nadia interjected. Musicians and traveling performers go on road trips like that, and characters doing a road trip for a coming-of-age movie. But that's what made it exciting, enough to be a story. She wiped the corners of her mouth with a paper napkin and held onto the paper plate that once housed the now ingested wrap. She curled the sides of the plate around the empty plastic cup that no longer had even a trace of the queso left in it after her finger ran along each bit of the tangy sauce. The article I read made you sound like an indie band on the road, and now staking your claim as a local artist. Kat was grateful for Nadia's presence in that moment, as the pleasant and animated lady's part in the conversation made mention of the article as public knowledge, which eased Katerina's fear that she would be perceived as a stalker for knowing about Julian's endeavors. That is very much what it is like, Julian replied, but my product is specific dishes rather than songs. He turned his attention back to Kat. So you elected to stay here during the years. Well, it is where my post-grad work was done, and since being a grad student does not exactly give one a great deal of financial leeway to travel, and since this is Austin, I stayed local. Kat said over a notification that sounded from Nadia's purse. It still seems incredible to me, Julia said as Nadia reached for her phone and glanced at a text message. A doctor. I am so impressed. While looking with admiration at Dr. Cook, he noticed her eyes slid to lead her head as she watched Nadia become visibly agitated from the content of her text. Julian followed suit, and they both watched as Nadia stood hurriedly, crumpling the plate and napkins. I need to go, she said, dropping her phone into her purse. I am so sorry, but thank you for including me, and thank you for the deliciousness. You have great food, and I will tell folks about this place. Julian lifted his hand and nodded with gracious recognition of the compliment. I really need to go. She stepped a few paces back to her car and turned around to walk backwards. It was very nice meeting both of you. I hope you enjoy this recommunication with each other. She turned back around and stuffed the refuse into her receptacle and strode fast to her car. Kat felt vulnerable without Nadia present, which seemed odd to her since the buffer was not part of her original plan in coming here. She watched with concern as Nadia got in and started her car. In a clear rush, Nadia pulled away. Kat noticed other people walking down the block and realized the lunch rush that drove a good portion of Julian's business could be starting soon. What do you mean by recommunicating? He asked, and she returned her gaze to him to see him awaiting her response. She thought of the night they had last seen each other. Sweet flirtations and slight inebriations giving way to self-affirming physical intimacies, the great distraction of bodies entwined, caresses and kisses, and the sheer ecstasy of using their bodies to hold the other nearest. The simple orchestration of living energy to discover connection and achieve what was dearest, the connection that remained even when her expectations of its presence in her life were dashed by his absence without word the following day at the coffee shop. Yet the pain had informed her decisions for too long. She could not allow herself to stay in the form of thinking and feeling that she had held on to for around a decade. As the opportunity to speak with him could be lost in a fraction of a moment, since he could be pulled away to tend to a customer, so could this chance be lost by life pulling them apart again. She decided to not waste any more of her time on what-ifs and assumed conclusion, embarrassments, and anger. She looked him square in his green eyes. It is not like we were lost to each other after our encounter. We crossed into each other's lives in the deepest of ways, and even though we did not match strong enough to maintain the communication, I felt we were connected. You affected my entire being, and the sudden removal of you sent me on a path that made me into what I am today. She watched him lick his bottom lip prior to biting it slightly, and she felt the need to throw caution to the wind. And I could say that I was jaded and felt scorned, so I avoided other relationships. And that would not be completely untrue. But it really was my choice in the end. Your influence on my life was a catalyst at best to my choices. So I do not blame you for any hurt I may have had. And I do not attribute my success to you either. But she looked past him and decided to go for it, looked him square in the eyes and asked, I guess I just want you to know that I was very happy with you. And I would like to know why that happiness was left at the dock at Mozart's when you did not show up there, did not call or contact me. I hold no more animosity, but I want to know why you stood me up. He shifted his eyes past her. Please. He looked back to her, and the sorrow on his face was evident. I will tell you, I really will. But I need you to hold on for just a little more time, he said as he stood and walked with a boisterous tone of camaraderie emitting in his salutation to the customers at the window of his truck. She watched him as he climbed into the door of the back of the mobile kitchen and listened to him talk with the customer. If he had any deep-seated emotion for the situation that was even remotely similar to what she felt, he was exceedingly adept at maintaining the professional demeanor to hide it. She admired him and was skeptical simultaneously. She told herself that the answer was important, whatever the answer may be. But the fact that she had come here and communicated her question that had lingered so long in the back of her thoughts and emotional reality was what really mattered. She had unburdened her heart by not voicing her feeling aloud, but also by posing the question to the one person who could give the answer to her inquiry. She watched as another two people came up to his window, and she wondered how long she could hold her pose regarding the question. She could not fault him for running his business, and could have a bit more patience to find out something that had been on her mind for 10 years. She waited this long. She figured that a few more minutes as he tended to the son of a... 3 more people joined the growing line leading to the window of his truck. She knew it was not his doing, but she wondered if he was using this time to formulate a plausible false answer to tell her. One of the common thoughts she had endured through the years was that he was a player, a man who leads a woman along with words and behaviors just to reach the end goal of sex and then disappears from her life. She had used the idea that she had gotten played as motivation to reaffirm her attention to her studies and work. The longer she waited at the little table beside the food truck, the more the thought grew in volume in her mind. She watched another person get on the line, and he quickly glanced in her direction, locking eyes and giving a slight shrug. She stood up and moved forward and watched his face turn from remorse to shock as she climbed into the door at the back of his food truck. She went right away to the tiny sink and washed her hands. I am not going to take no answer for an answer any longer. And if this is how I get to be close enough to you for us to talk, then let me do it. She addressed the growing crowd of people outside. Welcome to Sweet Heat, folks. Dr. Cook and Julian will be with you shortly. She grabbed a hairnet and looked at him while putting it on. Gloves? Under there, he motioned and turned back to the window. What can I get for you? She heard the customer place the order and pulled the gloves on. He turned around and she spoke before he moved. Just do. I will follow. Okay, he said, while moving to show her the placement of that which he spoke. The wraps are in here, labeled in their own separate boxes. Under here are the prepped tubs of queso. If someone asks for one of the salads or the sashi mesquite plates, just leave it to me. The drinks are in the cooler behind, and all prices are listed here at the drawer. Just take what you can, and he pitched his voice so the crowd would hear. No tips accepted. He handed off a wrap and cup to a customer and directed her to the register. The good Dr. Cook will take your money. Send your orders to Julian at Sweet Heat. Who is Julian? The next customer asked. I am, he said. Katerina said simultaneously. The customers surrounding the person who asked laughed at the interaction. The next few minutes were a flurry of activity as the two worked in tandem. He taking and fulfilling the orders while she accepted the payment and made change for each customer. When there was an order for a sashi mesquite plate, he took to the grill and worked seamlessly to blend together something he pulled from a freezer with the fragrant, floury, spiced vegetables on the grill. She took over fulfilling orders for wraps and queso cups until another order for a sashi mesquite plate came in. She called it over her shoulder and kept rolling with the tide of customers. You're new, a bearded man with a barrel chest said to her. Hey, Jules, who's the new hire? Not a new hire, she said. She's a dear friend helping out, Julian said. I'm not just helping out, I'm here for an answer, she said. What can I get for you? Give me a terry ancho wrap with double queso, the man said. No charge for the extra cup on this one, Julian said as she retrieved it. And what was your question? Without pausing her activity, she spoke. Are you sure you want to give an answer while in this public capacity? Of course. There's no difference between who I am and who they think I am. He turned and handed her one of the plates back-ordered. Here's the first of the two. Ring up before Maestro's terry ancho. He turned back to the grill. Throw it at me, Doc. What do you want to know? She rang up and transacted the first plate after handing the wrap to the regular, who dug right in. Why did you stand me up at Mozart's the night after we had sex about 10 years ago? Maestro coughed upon hearing this. Do you remember how strange it was to me that our friend from earlier was named Nadia? Because that was your mother's name. That's right, was. That night my phone was off while I was with you was the night she died. I had to rush to family and did not have time to think clearly. By the time I got my bearings, you had disconnected from me online and blocked my number. He turned to her and handed her the next plate. So what I want to know is, why, after our night together, why you wrote me off completely instead of being worried about why I disappeared. She looked from Julian out to Maestro. I just want to know if I'm expected to tip now, he said.